Guys, put your hands together for Rod Mathews.
All right, thank you very much. I was just having a conversation with Janelle at morning tea, towards the end of morning tea time, and she reminded me that Janelle used to work in the hospital, where they have standard operating procedures for everything. And as a result, trying to recruit people, you've got very strict procedures around how you go around recruitment. You've got panel interviews, you have to ask certain questions at certain times. Anyone in that position, just out of curiosity? Okay, sorry, Penny, where do you work? Shell Harbour Council. Okay, so it has to be a panel interview. And you have to prove that everyone's had an equal share. Okay, added degree of difficulty there, without a doubt. Sorry, was your hand up as well? Only panel interviewing, okay. Okay, so these are added degrees of difficulty because it becomes a little bit more difficult to build rapport within the interview because, of course, there's the whole what you can and what you can't ask. Something that may help there, and of course there's no magic wands with these things, is to think about what you can do before the interview, of course, when you first meet them. How can you have a conversation out in the reception area before they even come in order to increase the likelihood that they're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. But of course, it's a tough gig when you're sitting in there and there's this panel of people in front of you. We have to do that because we have to be showing that we're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, the drawback of that is that what we then are more likely to select is someone who's very polished at panel interviews, because that's how they perform. Right, and being polished in a panel interview. Now, if that's one of the job skills, being able to sit and being able to field questions from a variety of different people at a time. So, for example, a university lecturer or a tutor. So that may be a good skill to have, in which case set the interview up that way. But if that's not the skill and you have the choice, then try and avoid that. Try and get the interview as much as possible to reflect the skill that we need them to display. So thank you for that reminder, Janelle. Good point, good point. Now, what we will do is we will start to look now at questions that we need to ask. Well, you might remember when we did it the first time around, when we had half the people out, half the people in, and they had a list of 17 questions. All right? And did you notice that? People just asking the questions and then ticking things off. All right. What's the effect of someone who's asking a whole battery of questions and just ticking things off? What's the effect to you on the other side of that? They're not listening. They're just going through the process, going through the motions. They're probably already decided. It's not me, it's someone else. I'm just the dumb bunny they've got to compare someone to. Can be the effect. So one of the mistakes is to go into an interview and think that it's all about questions. It's not. You know, maybe 5, 10 questions maximum. Really, the key thing is the questions you ask underneath those questions and what words the person chooses to use in order to answer those questions. So it's a listening exercise more than it is a questioning exercise. Having said that, we will start to look at a tool. We'll start off with the questions, and then we'll move into a skill that will help us increase our ability to start to hook in to exactly the words that people are using and what that tells us about what it's going to be like to work with that person. All right, so we'll start off with the basics. If you've ever done any sort of tertiary level education, okay, even if you do those community college TAFE courses like Creative Tooth Decay or Bonsai Your Pet or Needlecraft for Heroin Addicts, these sort of courses, they'll have a business communication skills component in it, and they'll talk about questions. And when they talk about questions, they'll divide questions into 2 groups. Anyone want to have a shot at what those 2 groups of questions are?
Open and closed.
Fantastic. There are open questions and there are closed. Let's start off with the basics, get that out of the way. Fantastic. Okay, so could you please give me a definition as to what is the difference between an open and closed question?
Yes.
Fantastic. Well picked up. So, was that open or closed? Okay, so a closed question is going to get us yep or nap. Or one word, very limited response. So what does an open question get us, usually?
Explanation.
Great. INFO. Increased info. We're more likely to get an explanation, a sentence, a paragraph, that sort of thing. Okay, great. So, what words could I use at the beginning of a sentence that would mean that I'm setting myself up to get a yep or a nup? What words do you use at the beginning of a sentence to get yes or no? Have, is, do,
Tell me how.
did.
Tell me how.
We'll come back to that one. Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
Are, can, will, would, should, could. And the opposites of these: haven't, isn't, don't, didn't, aren't, couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, willn't. Okay, lots of ways to ask a closed question. How do you ask an open question? Three ways, really. Even if we use the tell me or the describes, was the example that was given before, there will be an overt or implied what, why, or how following that. Now, when it comes to the when, where, who, okay, yes, strictly speaking, they probably are open questions. And yet, for all intents and purposes, they tend to give us a limited answer. When? About 10 years ago. Where? The Oval Office. Who? Monica Lewinsky. Okay. Which, of course, begs the question, what were you thinking? Oh, that was the big question, wasn't it? Yeah, that was the big question. How exactly? Okay, so let's just illustrate this a little bit. If you could turn to the person next to you, just choose who's going to be A and who's going to be B. So choose who's going to be A and who's going to be B. Hands up the A's. Who are the A's? Fantastic. Hands up the B's. Who are the B's? Okay, hands up the A's once again. A's. Without saying anything, without writing anything down, just in your head, I would like you to think about your favourite meal. Your favourite 3-course meal. So you will need a favourite entree. You will need a favourite main. And you will need a favourite dessert as well. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, going, oh, I can't possibly pick a favourite, there's too many to choose from. just pick one for the purpose of the activity. Thank you very much. Yes, one that you really like. Thank you. B's. Who are the B's? Okay. In a moment, I'm going to give you 1 minute to find out as much as you can about your A's favourite meal, and you are only allowed to ask closed questions. Let's take this to extremes just to notice what it's like. So, A's, hands up A's again. For the next 1 minute, you are only allowed to say yep or nap. If your B asks you a question that you cannot answer yes or no, all you are allowed to say is, I'm sorry, but I'm not at liberty to divulge that information at this particular juncture. However, if you care to ask me after the minute is over, I'll be more than happy to share at length the answer to that question. That's all you're allowed to say. Okay? On the one hand, yes, this is just one of those dicky things you got to do on a session like this, quite correct. On the other hand, as you do this, notice what it's like. What's it like when you are only being asked closed questions? And notice what it's like when you are only asking closed questions, and I'd like to talk about that when we come back. You have 1 minute. Your time starts now. Time's up. Okay. All right, there we go. So that's all the time you had. I'd be curious to know, how'd you go? How'd we go here? What did you find out? Nothing?
I got on train, mate.
Do you know what it's not?
I know what it's
Can you list what it's not?
I can. It's not seafood. It's not Indian. It's not Italian. It's not Mediterranean.
It's not anything!
It is cool.
I think it's from Jupiter, okay? Okay, so we're very good about, with closed questions, we find out quickly what it's not. Excellent.
I got on train, mate.
Did you really?
well done.
What's the entree?
Squid.
What type of squid?
She wanted...
How's it
Huh?
cooked?
I didn't ask that.
Is it crumbed?
Well, I didn't ask that. I thought it was good enough to get squid.
This is what happens. We go, is it this? Nah. Is it that? Nah. Is it this? Nah. Is it that? Nah. Is it squid? Yes. Oh, all right. Let's move on. Is what happens. And so therefore we find an answer and we get so excited that we've finally got a yes that we stop there, we don't dig, and we move on.
You gave me a minute.
I ain't got a minute, Rob. Give me a break. What was the main, just out of curiosity?
Fish and veg.
Fish and veg. What type of veg?
No,
What type of fish?
no,
How is it cooked?
didn't worry. It's my restaurant. I cook it the way I want.
Exactly right. And if you don't like it, when it comes back, I'll spit on it and send. I've been to that restaurant.
I didn't find out what it was that Nicole liked. That Nikki liked, but I did find out that she cooks at home with her partner. So whatever it was at home with her partner, and that's where she likes to have it.
So we get, if we do get information, sometimes not even helpful. All right? So we find out a lot about what it's not. We don't find out any detail. And if we do find out any information, it's not necessarily useful. Great. So what can we say if we had to sum up closed questions? What can we say?
Waste of time.
They're very low on information, but let's check whether they are totally without use or not. Let's just check that theory by doing the exact opposite. So bees, who are the bees?
Oh, I think it's me one.
Okay, so this time it's your turn. Pardon me, without saying anything, without writing anything down, just in your head. What is your favourite meal? 3-course meal. Entree. Main. And how much chocolate, your favourite dessert? A's, who are the A's? I'm going to give you 1 minute to find out enough about B's favourite meal with a view to be able to replicate it for them. You know, be that you cook it or be that take them to a restaurant or whatever it is. But I'm going to fix it a little bit. B's, who are the B's? What I want you to do is I want you to go berserk with the detail, because I'm going to allow the A's to ask open questions. So they're going to say, what's your favourite entree? When they do that, what you've got to do is you can't just say prawn cocktail. What you've got to do is you go, oh, favourite entree. Well, the last time I had this favourite entree was a little restaurant in Manly, actually. You walk down the Corso and you get to the end of the Corso, the ocean end, not the ferry end. There's no good restaurants down there, and don't even bother with that end. Anyway, you get to the ocean end, you turn to your right, you go along, there's this wonderful little restaurant. We know it well. We walk in, the maitre d' always says, hello, Mr. Mathews, how are you? We've been there so often. And I hate it when they say king prawns on the menu, but you get those stupid, there's nothing king about a prawn that big. All right? This is what I want you to do. Bless you. I want you to go berserk with the details. A's, you are allowed to ask open questions. Notice what it's like. And we'll talk about that when we come back. Your time starts now. Time's up. Okay. Let's see how we went. Now, first of all, sorry, your name? Dennis. Dennis reckons he got it. What did you get?
Barbecue octopus at the lagoon, and I said I wouldn't take him there.
That's too expensive. You're not worth it.
Of course, yeah. And barramundi, and he likes it with prawns and asparagus. And dessert, typical. I didn't even have to. I told him it was sticky date, and he went, "Yep." Very simple.
Fantastic. There you go. All three. Is there any information that he missed?
Yes, he did actually. He was too quick because actually the octopus was there, but I was more on the halloumi that they used to have with the asparagus, and he put asparagus in the main, but it was really the halloumi with the sauce and then the cherry tomatoes, which they don't make anymore because the halloumi is now far too big. When they do it now, it used to be sliced a lot thinner. And that's been a major issue with the lagoon for the last couple of years. They changed the menu, but then when he ate the barramundi always has the prawns, but it has the chili sauce around it in the bun, and it's not the barramundi Nick, it's the other one that they have. They keep
So if Dennis served this meal now to,
He
Lee.
assumed a lot actually.
Anyone else find this? Okay, it ends up, it gets to the point where you get information that you don't need. Did anyone get information they don't need? Okay, all right. So we got information we don't need. And so then what we do, because we're on a deadline, we assume information and we fill in the gaps. All right? So there's still a problem with open questions. What's the problem with open questions? Okay, they're quite high on info. And that's the problem because they are low on control. What happens when you ask an open question is you hand control of the direction of the conversation over to the other person, and they get to take it where they will. And where they will may be useful, it may not. Which is a great place to start, but then there'll come a point in time, won't there, where we'll go, okay, we've got to start to steer this puppy. Yeah. Otherwise we're going to be here next week, and I got bigger fish to fry, if you'll excuse the pun. Okay. So the benefit of closed... Say again, sorry? Because the benefit of closed questions is they are quite high on control. So with closed questions, you get to say, are we going to go down here or are we going to head down there? And they go, there. And you go, okay. So now that we're here, do we go there or do we go there? And I go, okay. Now do we go here? Do we go there? So yeah, so the aim is, obviously, is that we need to...
Hey Rob, this is useful for parenting as well.
Yes. Very good. Yes, it is useful for parenting, also useful for selling as well. Talking about taking a brief from your clients. Right, okay. Cash, credit card or cash? How are you going to pay for that? That's a closed question. You are going to pay for that. Very good. Open. All right, so we're building this funnel, but it's still not enough when it comes to interviews. There's a problem even with this. Just to demonstrate this problem, if I could please ask you to grab a blank piece of paper in front of you. Doesn't need to be totally blank, you just need space to write a few words. I'm going to write 2 words on this piece of paper. As soon as you see the first word, you have 20 seconds to write down the first 5 words that come into your head when you see that word. Okay, so they're the first 5, not the best 5. So if you're sitting there going, what about that? Oh no, I can't write that. What about that? Oh, I can't even spell that one. You're taking too long. It's just got to go bang, 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 bang. All right? Same for the second word. As soon as I write it down, first 5 words. Here we go. First word is... learning. Off you go. 20 seconds. All right, fantastic. Same with the second word. As soon as I write it down, first 5 words that come into your head, write them down. Here we go. Yeah, only 5, mate. Only 5. Stop when you get to the bottom of the page. All right. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to find out how many points each table has scored. Now, with this table down here that's only got 2 people, I might split you up, and if I could ask you just to go to another table, maybe this table and this table in the middle here, just for this activity. Now, the way your team scores a point is your team scores 1 point every time everyone on the table has exactly the same word. So, for example, under sex, Dennis has written goat. Yeah, after me, thank you. If everyone on this table has written goat, then they score 1 point. If 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if 5 people have written goat and 1 person has written horned domesticated animal that one may find on a farm, no points. Everyone has to have goat in order to earn 1 point. For the second one, he's written Batman outfit, love cuffs, electrobes. You're a sick puppy, pal, without a doubt. Please be responsible for yourself with this. If you've written something down that you don't want to share, all you need is 1 person on the table to share theirs, and if there's no matches, there's no matches. So please be responsible for yourself with your own level of comfort. Okay, off you go. All right, let's see how many points each table has scored. We'll start over here. You have the amazing total of? 0. You have the amazing total of? Oh, you got 1. Ooh, well done. Yeah. Is that right? Everyone had the word fun. Oh, you do too? Did that help or hinder? Don't answer that. It could be a long, long week. So 1? None? None? None. Not even with Goat Boy?
Quite a different animal.
Yes, and I can't believe no one else had armadillo. I just can't. Fantastic. Okay, let's think about that for a second. We've got 2 words here that you would think we would all have a common understanding of, and yet we only got 1 point. Why is that?
We think differently.
We all use the same words, but the words exist within our own perception.
I think sex to procreate and have a family, and they thought I was from Tasmania.
Ah, the Catholic approach.
I have a family, and they think
Just as well you weren't on that table. Crikey. They're all having fun. I got pictures of them rocking up to a party. There's a bowl. You put the keys in the bowl. Okay, so the words that we use are the same, and yet when we use these words, the images that come up in our mind, the other words that we associate, the feelings that we get are obviously dependent upon our brain chemistry, our genes, our prior experience, our biology, etc., etc., etc. So this is still a problem, because if we only use open questions and then closed questions, there is still room for misinterpretation, because we still may fall into the trap of assuming certain things. We need to reduce the chance of that happening, particularly if we're about to put food on this person's table, pay them for their skills. We need to make sure that we're getting the skills that we're paying for. So there is a tool that will help us reduce the chance of this happening, and it's a tool called fluff busting. The concept here is, what was that? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, fluff busting. It's actually a method for taking fluff out of the navels of old men. Oh, what a job that would be. Works on the concept that the words that we use are not specific. There is room for interpretation. So when we are busting the fluff, what we are doing is we are asking the speaker to be more specific around a particular word. And that particular word is of particular importance to us because there is a link between that word and what we're looking for. All right? Now, there are some pointer words that we can use in order to help us find this fluff. And if we can identify what these words will be before we go into the interview, and they're usually around the key selection criteria, you know, what it is you're looking for, the sorts of skills, experience, expertise, they'll be around those. So as soon as you hear a word that's peripheral to that word, we need to bust the fluff around that word, find out more information. How do we do this? Well, let's go back to primary school English. What's a noun? Yeah, it's a naming word, a person, a place, a thing. All right? Daniel is a noun. Wollongong is a noun. Chair is a noun. All right? So if someone says, I want a new job, for the sake of argument, the fluffy noun there is job. So if we want to find more information out about the noun job, the question that we ask will start with the word what. And there's lots of what questions that we can ask to get more information about the word job. What job exactly would you like? What is it about your current job that isn't meeting what it is you're looking for? What is it you most want to leave behind in your current job? What is it that you're most looking forward to? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? Okay, so if we want more information around the word job, it's going to start with the question what. High school English continued, primary school English continued. What's a verb? Doing word, to run, to jump, to skip. These are verbs. We don't run, jump, skip that much at work. What are work verbs? What are work verbs? Toil, slave, burn out. What else?
Get it done.
Get it done, complete, design, implement, discuss, deliver, build, test, communicate. These are work verbs. All right? So again, if we're clever, when we start to identify what it is we're looking for in this person, we can identify the verbs that are associated with that. And when someone says, we manage the implementation of the project, well, he's actually used two verbs there, haven't they? Manage the implementation of. So we can ask for more information. Yeah. How did you go about implementing it? How did that work? How would you do it differently if you had to do it again? How have you done it in the past? So again, if we want more information around verbs, the question is going to start with the word how. This is where we leave high school English and we go for words that indicate that someone is operating from a rule. Include words like must, have to, can't, should. If people are using these words, there is an implied rule there. Now, rules are useful in some circumstances, very useful in hospitals, for example, very useful in councils, stop us getting sued, etc., reduce the chance of that happening. And sometimes it's worthwhile for us to test those rules to find out what's behind the rule and also to see if we can push a little bit further. And there was a classic example of this. I used to work in North Sydney. North Sydney, there's a big intersection. Miller Street meets Pacific Highway, and there's another road comes in, it's Victoria Cross. Very busy intersection. At lunchtime, what happens is you don't want to wait for the lights. This was before they had underpasses. What you do is you just, you'd look and then you'd run across. And then you'd look and you'd run across. It's called jaywalking. And the sheriff, the sheriffs at North Sydney Council were sharks for it. So it was not uncommon to see the sheriffs standing around this intersection at lunchtime, and if you crossed against the traffic lights, they'd say, "Excuse me, sir, excuse me, madam, do you realise you just contravened subsection blah, blah, blah of the local penal code? I'm going to have to," there's the rule, guy in a uniform, have to book you for jaywalking. Can I please have your name and address? This was on the news one night, many years ago, and a woman tested this rule beautifully. She got pulled over, I'm going to have to write you, and maybe you can confirm or deny this. No, she's going, no, don't ask me. And the sheriff said, I'm going to have to book you for crossing against the traffic lights. Can I please have your name and address? And she said, what would happen if I didn't give you my name and address and I just kept walking? And the sheriff said, nothing, ma'am, I can't do a thing. And so she said, right, see you later. Off she walked. Apparently, jaywalking is not an arrestable offence. Like they can't physically, sheriff are not allowed to physically restrain you for jaywalking. And I would never have known this had the lady not asked the rule testing question.
What if?
Yes. Good one for pushing your own limits as well when you hear yourself use a bit of a rule. Now, you have to be, pretty comfortable with yourself to ask that question, because the implication is that you don't know, and you should know. Why don't you know that? So you have to be comfortable playing one downsmanship to your candidate and asking that. Rules, verbs, nouns, rules. Everyone generalises. We all do it. Everyone does it all the time. They're generalisations. Every, all, never. They is a generalisation as well. Two ways to test a generalisation. One is if you have rapport, one is if you don't have rapport. If you have rapport, you can just repeat the generalisation with a big question mark after it. All, every, never. All right? And of course, when you do that, if you're anything like me, what happens is the other person starts to think, well, not every time, okay? And we start looking for the exception to the rule. If you don't have that much rapport and you've got to be a little bit more careful, a better way to word the question is, can you think of a time when that wasn't the case? So if someone says, all bosses are bastards, then we'd say, can you think of a boss you had you liked? Oh yeah, there's this one guy, Mark. I wonder where Mark is now. He's a good fella. Yeah, okay? So they're looking for the opposite. So just for space sake, we'll go all. One more. What colour haven't I used yet? Do I need a double R for comparison?
No.
Oh. Optional extra. Okay, so comparisons. Words that indicate that someone is making a comparison include words like better, nice, easy, worse, tall, rich, good looking. Okay? How can you possibly know what is rich unless at some level you are comparing it to poor? You must be making that comparison at some level. All right? So if someone makes a comparison, it's better to do it this way, then the question we ask is, of course, compared to what? What's the other way? There's another way? What's the other way? What was the other way you used to do it? That's interesting. All right? Compared to what? So, what we've got now is this fantastic questioning process. Open questions, fluff busting, closed questions. You ask an open question, hand control of the conversation over the other person. You keep your ear out for a particular word that you know is going to get you closer to one of your key selection criteria. As soon as you hear that word, you bust the fluff around that particular word. Right? And then when they've answered that, and you may have to ask several fluff-busting questions, then you confirm it with a closed question by saying, so, am I correct in thinking? Is that correct? And then you ask another open question and allow them to take it where they will. You hear some words, you fluff the bust, and then you confirm. Then you ask another open question, allow them to take it where, and this is a conversation interview. Is what this is. Just to finish up, I'm going to ask you to do one more activity to Practice this. What I'm going to ask you to do is to, one more time, find someone in the room who you do not know. All right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to find out a little bit about their plans for their department, division, organisation. And I'm going to ask you to do this by practicing these questions. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that I might team up with Michael. And the person who was expert at this was Detective Columbo. Does anyone remember Detective Columbo? Those who are old enough, any what do you call it, police show sort of thing. All right, and CSI, they do the same sort of thing. They ask these questions. So we're going to do the Columbo walk, all right? So I'll find Michael, we're going to walk around the room, and as we're walking around, I'm going to say, so, tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your business? Nice open question, hands controller over to Michael. Michael answers that as best he can. He only needs to give me 1 or 2 sentences, maximum, because we're practicing my ability to fluff bust. We're not practicing what Mark's thinking about for the organisation. It's about me practicing this. So Michael might say, I'm going to increase profitability. And you go, okay, great. So what could we bust the fluff out of there? So there's a how, and there's the profitability as a what. We'll go with the how, and we'll say, how exactly do you propose to go about increasing profitability? I'm going to reduce costs. Any particular costs? Salaries. Do you have anyone's job in mind? Yours. Okay, so let me get this straight. One of your first acts is going to be to sack me, is that correct? Yes. Okay, next question. All right, yeah. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to stand up, find a partner, and just for the next couple of minutes, be Detective Columbo's. All right, just before we go to the question side of things, the question and answer session, just be curious to know, what's that like? What's it like? What do you have to do in order to be a really good Detective Columbo? You've got to really listen. There's a bit of a saying, are you listening or just waiting for your turn to talk? And often what happens when we're at barbecues, pubs, clubs, we've got friends over, we're not really listening, we're just waiting for our turn to talk because they've said something that's triggered something in us and we're just waiting for them to draw breath. All right? We have to, in an interview, we have to really be present with the person. And what this tool does is it helps us do that because we've really got to listen for the next word that's going to get us closer. Fantastic. Secondly, what's it like when your fluff is being busted?
Pretty good.
So if you know the subject, it's actually quite flattery, isn't it? That's quite nice, being able to talk about, yeah, I can tell you that. What would happen if you didn't know your subject?
You get sprung.
You're going to get sprung really quickly. And that's the other benefit of this, is that it very quickly becomes evident as to the candidate's real levels of ability. Because if you start drilling down in a particular area and you start getting this sort of thing, we know we have reached the limit of their thinking on this particular topic. How cool is it to know that? Thank you very much for your input and for your participation this morning. Much appreciated. I'll end it there and I'll hand back over to Steve.
We might, before Rod leaves us, we might head back to the stools and just basically get your thoughts again. I thought that was another fantastic session. Got plenty of value in it. And I was just actually saying to Ari Galpers walked into the back of the room there, and I was just saying to Ari how I can actually learn alongside you guys. It's not just about you learning as well. I'm sitting down the back going, wow, that's gold right there, right now. So, guys, it was excellent. So I'm curious, any questions out there based on what we've heard in the last 45 minutes? We'd love to hear it. While we've got access to Rod, is there anything you'd want more clarity around, or is there anything that you just want to know? Yes?
Yeah, you spoke about telling there are people who are very skilled enough to do an interview, but actually it doesn't measure the skill set. But if you see in the current scenario, like I'm coming from the university environment, and you have to do that, you have to go through that steps. You have to go through the selection criteria. You have to get that next level, go to an interview, and follow. There are so many strategies that people look for. There's the STAR or SWOT analysis. They say you ask a question, you have to say an example, a result, and then what you've done, what's your contribution. So there are still the practices are going on. So, but people I think have to still have to follow those things.
So you're quite correct. We're recruiting for. There's two things we're looking for when we're conducting an interview. One is, are they capable, and another one is, what are they going to be like to work with. And the challenge for panel interviews and for having to, as soon as you start putting policy and procedure around things and saying we have to do it a certain way to make sure everyone reaches a certain standard, is that it makes it more difficult for us to find out what this person's going to be like to work with. Because you're right, what happens is people know, I know the process. They go into government-run organisation interviews and they know the process and they have those STAR answers ready to go. They know what the questions are because they have to, because that's the policy. So you're right, it dramatically reduces our ability to be able to find out what they're going to be like to work with. So the only thing I can recommend is, first of all, is the rapport beforehand. Is as they're outside in the reception area, as much as you can, have a chat with them out there, firstly. Secondly is the reference checking. So when you're phoning up previous employers or previous managers or previous bosses, is to use that with them. And of course, a key question you ask when you're reference checking is, would you hire this person again? Okay, because they may not feel comfortable about answering what the person was like, but the litmus test is always, would you hire this person again? And quite often you hear people say, actually, no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And actually something we've used in addition to that, Rod, is out of 10, how would you say Dan's performance is in this key area? Can you just give me a gauge out of 10? Because it's very hard for people to articulate they're amazing, they're very average, and they don't want to say that. But if one's the lowest, 10's the highest. I've actually used that in the past.
That's a damn good one. I know that by force field analysis. So you can ask people on a scale of 0 to 10, rate this person's performance. Once they've done that, you say, okay, what stopped you from rating it a 10? They get to say, and then you go, okay, what stopped you from rating it a 0? And they get to say. So that may help, because you're more likely to get things out there about what they're like to work with.
Yeah.
I hope that helps, but you're right.
Is that helpful?
Interview's challenging.
Yeah.
The other thing is about the opportunity cost. Is there a way the opportunity cost is lesser in a small, medium scale industry if it's 10 people? Is there a difference? Is it easy to get an employee out and get a new one?
Do you know, I would say it would probably be, the smaller the organisation, the bigger the effect on the costs, because it's a larger percentage of the workforce. If you've got a team of 4 and one person leaves, that's 25% of your workforce has just left. If you've got a team of 100 and one person leaves, so I would say it's probably even maximised.
Okay, in regards to asking for a number, like a quantity, 1 out of 10, I guess quizzing prior employers and whatnot. What happens if, say in the case, I know a friend, she left her employer and then the employer just went crazy, like, I can't believe you're leaving me and whatnot, and it had nothing to do with...
Started boiling bunnies and following them around. And
yeah, it was about her not wanting to drive to the Southern Highlands every day. And the employer just went absolutely ballistic, like deleted her off Facebook, LinkedIn, everything.
You know it's bad when they delete you off Facebook.
But yeah,
it's the electronic version of that.
Like, kept on ringing her up and whatnot. You know, how do you, as a recruiter, deal with such a thing? Can you see through that?
Not always. You're looking for patterns when it comes to recruitment. So I'd advise against only speaking to one person. Because what you're doing is you're looking for patterns. And if there's something that's weird, then it's weird. And that should be waving a red flag in some way, shape or form. So if you get one person who's just going berserk, avoid the temptation of making a decision based on that one particular person. Try as much as you can.
Let's say if you rang them up and they didn't go berserk, but they gave somehow, you got hold of this person through a different means, not like through a reference or whatever.
Yeah, actually, do you mind?
Go.
Yeah, I think, so with that, and even just calibrating, when you talk to people, and generally if you're a lovely person, and I said to my previous employer, which I haven't done for a lot of years, I'm leaving. They would say, Stephen, good luck, all the best to your future, everything else. If you need someone, a referral or anything, get them to call me, please, and I will sing your praises. But if you ring someone and you can just feel on the phone they're reluctant to give you any information, just know there's a reason for that. There's a real reason for that. And that's sometimes a flag, but then like Rod said, you've got to layer that in by not just taking one person's opinion. You're going to contact different people and you're going to gradually get a portfolio, and sometimes it even comes down to your gut feeling.
I would also recommend, and my microphone's gone at this particular point in time, I would also recommend that if you're getting it down to the last one or two, consider a psychological assessment of some sort, because that will help you confirm or deny any red flags that have been raised. You don't need to do it for everyone, but if you're just down to the last two or three, find someone who can do psychological assessments.
Okay, finally a tough one. How do you recruit a recruiter?
This is like thinking about thinking. This is where you really need to know your stuff, because you're showing what it is that you're looking for. So you really need to be on show when you're recruiting a recruiter. But if you're looking to find one, again, word of mouth. If you're looking to find a recruiter, you need to hit the phones with other people who are in business. Ask around this room. Who's someone that you know and that you trust? Because you're right, it's like any business. There will be a percentage that are fantastic, there will be a large volume of them that are okay, and there will be some that will be terrible. So, word of mouth.
And I think in our days we live in now, you can't hide. We have LinkedIn, we have Facebook, we have a lot of means for doing checks on people. You type their name in LinkedIn, you see common threads there, people you know, then that's where you go and you check first. Yeah. But I think that's going to be all. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Rod. Very cool, very helpful. Thank you, Rod.